It was almost midnight when Sarah sat alone in her small apartment, the flickering streetlight outside casting pale yellow stripes across her worn-out floor. Her phone screen glowed softly beside her Bible, untouched for weeks. She'd prayed once, prayed until her voice trembled and her eyes burned, but silence had been her only answer. She whispered now, almost to herself, "God, are you still there?" The only response was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a passing car. Life had taken so much from her in such little time. Her husband, gone in an accident 6 months ago. Her job, lost 2 months later when the company downsized. Even her faith, once her anchor, now felt like sand slipping through her fingers. She had stopped going to church, stopped singing, stopped believing her prayers mattered. But that night, something pulled her back to her phone. She wasn't even sure why she opened the YouTube app. She'd meant to watch something, anything, to quiet her thoughts. And then she saw it. "God says, you were meant to hear this." The title froze her. It felt personal, too personal. Like someone had written it for her. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. "Coincidence," she murmured. Yet, something inside whispered back, "No, it isn't." She pressed play. The video opened with soft piano music and a voice, calm, deep, and certain. "Greater than, God says, I know you feel forgotten. I know you think I've been silent. But my silence does not mean absence. I've been closer than you can see, waiting for you to look up again." Sarah's breath caught. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. The voice continued, every word cutting straight through her defenses. "Greater than, you've cried in secret, thinking no one saw. But I did. Every tear you thought hit the ground alone, I caught. I'm restoring what was lost, not in the way you expect, but in the way your soul needs." She covered her mouth, a sob breaking loose. It wasn't just a message. It was her message. Memories flashed in her mind. The accident, the funeral, the empty house. The questions she'd screamed into the night. Why did you let this happen? Where were you when I needed you? And now, here it was, an answer that felt like it came from beyond the screen, straight from heaven. She paused the video, tears streaming down her cheeks. The city outside was still dark, but inside her, something began to stir, a spark she thought had long died out. Sarah opened her Bible for the first time in months. It fell open on its own to Isaiah 43:2. "Greater than, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you." Her trembling hand brushed over the verse. It was as if the page had been waiting for her to return. The next morning, she woke up before sunrise. For the first time in a long while, she made coffee not out of habit, but because she wanted to start again. She sat by the window, whispered a shaky prayer, and said, "If you're still here, God, I'm listening." That day, she got an unexpected call. It was from a woman she used to work with at the company that had laid her off. "Sarah," the voice said warmly, "we've started a new community project, helping widows and single parents rebuild after loss. We need someone with your experience. Would you be interested?" Sarah's heart skipped. "You said, helping widows." "Yes, I remembered what you went through, and I thought you might connect with them." For a moment, Sarah couldn't speak. She felt tears threaten again, but this time, they weren't from pain. She accepted the job, not just because she needed work, but because it felt like something beyond coincidence. The timing, the message, the call, it all aligned too perfectly. That week, she visited the community center for the first time. The place was small but bright, with colorful murals and laughter echoing through the halls. Women gathered around tables, sharing stories, sewing, cooking, and slowly healing. One woman, an older widow named Ruth, took Sarah's hand and said quietly, "Sometimes, God lets us fall so He can teach us how to rise. But He never leaves us lying there." Sarah smiled softly. I'm beginning to understand that." Days turned into weeks, and something extraordinary began happening. Every person Sarah met seemed to carry a story that mirrored her own in some way. A young mother who'd lost her husband to illness. A woman rebuilding her life after losing everything in a fire. Each story was a reflection of heartbreak, but also of divine restoration. And through helping them, Sarah's heart slowly healed. Yet one night, as she locked up the center and walked toward her car, she felt that same stirring again, the same whisper she had felt when she first saw the video. It was gentle but unmistakable, like a thought that wasn't entirely her own. You were meant to hear it so you could help them hear me too. She froze, heart pounding. The wind rustled softly around her, carrying the scent of rain and the faint sound of distant church bells. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. That night, she went home and wrote a note in her journal. Greater than, God's message isn't always a thunderclap. Sometimes, it's a whisper through a video title, a verse in the dark, or a stranger's kindness. But when you hear it, truly hear it, you know. You were meant to. As she set her pen down, peace washed over her like warm sunlight breaking through clouds. She realized the truth she'd forgotten. God had never left. He'd been weaving something through her pain, preparing her not just to be healed, but to become healing for others. And just as she drifted off to sleep, her phone buzzed again, a new notification from the same channel. God says, "Your story isn't over yet." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "I know," she whispered. "I'm starting to believe that again." That night, heaven felt close. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was full of presence. Full of promise. Sarah finally understood. Some messages are not found by accident. They're sent at the exact moment your heart is ready to receive them. And when they come, they change everything. Months passed, and Sarah's life began to bloom again, quietly, almost tenderly, like a garden returning after a long winter. Every morning, she woke with purpose. The community center became her second home, a place where laughter returned to lives that had once been defined by loss. But deep within her heart, she sensed there was still more, something God had yet to reveal. One rainy afternoon, as Sarah finished organizing boxes of donated clothes, she noticed a young woman standing hesitantly at the door. Her clothes were soaked, and her eyes carried that same emptiness Sarah once knew too well. "Come in," Sarah said softly, rushing to grab a towel. "You're drenched. Sit here, I'll get you some tea." The girl obeyed, shivering slightly. "Thank you," she murmured. "I didn't know where else to go." Sarah smiled gently. "You found the right place. What's your name?" "Leah." The name lingered between them, fragile but full of meaning. Leah's story unfolded slowly. A husband lost to war, a child at home with her elderly mother, and a heart so broken she'd thought of giving up completely. Sarah listened in silence, the way someone does when they recognize their own pain in another's voice. Then she reached across the table, her hand resting on Leah's trembling one. "You're not here by accident," she whispered. "You were meant to be here today." Leah's lips quivered. "You sound like that video I saw last night. It said the same thing. You were meant to hear this." Sarah froze. Her eyes widened slightly. "Wait. You saw that video?" Leah nodded. "It came up on my phone when I couldn't sleep. I don't even remember searching for it." Something holy stirred in the air between them. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized the divine thread continuing. God wasn't done. The same message that had rescued her was now reaching others, weaving through lives she hadn't even met yet. In that moment, Sarah understood. This wasn't coincidence. It was calling. From that day forward, she began recording small devotionals for the women in her group. Simple, heartfelt words inspired by scripture and experience. She never planned to share them publicly. But one evening, Ruth, the older widow, said gently, "Sarah, you should post these online. You don't know who might need to hear them." Sarah hesitated. "I'm not a preacher, Ruth. I'm just someone who's been through a lot." Ruth smiled knowingly. "And that's exactly why people will listen." So Sarah did it. She uploaded her first video under the same title that had changed her life. "God says, you were meant to hear this." She didn't expect much, maybe a few views from the women at the center. But within days, the video spread. Hundreds, then thousands of people watched, commented, shared. Messages poured in from strangers around the world. "I felt like you were speaking directly to me. I was about to give up, but your words stopped me. I think God used you to remind me He hasn't forgotten." Each comment brought tears to Sarah's eyes. She prayed over every name she read, knowing that behind each message was a story, a storm, and a waiting miracle. One night, as she read through the messages, she came across one that stood out. It was from a man named Daniel. "Greater than, I don't know why your video came up on my feed, but I needed it. I'm a single father, and I've been struggling to keep my faith after losing my wife last year. Thank you for reminding me that God still speaks. Sarah reread his message several times. Something in his words, the quiet strength, the honesty, moved her deeply. She replied kindly, offering prayer and encouragement, the way she did with everyone else. But somehow, the conversation didn't end there. Days turned into weeks, and they began exchanging messages regularly, sharing verses, life lessons, and the ways God had been restoring their hearts. Through each exchange, Sarah felt a new kind of peace, something pure and steady. One day, Daniel wrote, "Greater than, Sarah, I used to think my story was over when my wife died. But listening to you, watching how you turned your pain into purpose, it gave me hope that maybe God's not done with me yet." Sarah smiled through tears as she typed back, "Greater than, He's never done. He just rewrites the story in ways we don't expect." As their friendship grew, Daniel visited the city for work and asked if he could stop by the community center. Sarah agreed nervously. When he arrived, she was struck by how familiar he felt, like meeting someone God had introduced long before they ever spoke. They spent hours talking about faith, loss, and healing. When he saw the women Sarah worked with, he said quietly, "You've built something beautiful here. It's like hope has a home again." Sarah felt her chest tighten. "It's not me," she said softly. "It's Him. He just used my brokenness as a doorway." That night, as she locked the center after everyone had left, she looked up at the sky. The clouds had cleared, revealing stars that shimmered like promises. She whispered, "Lord, I see now. You never waste pain. You turn it into purpose." The following months unfolded like chapters of grace. Sarah's online ministry grew beyond anything she'd imagined. Her videos reached people in different countries, different languages, even those who didn't consider themselves believers found comfort in her words. And yet, through it all, she never forgot the night that started it, the night when she saw a simple video titled, "God Says, You Were Meant to Hear This." She often thought about how strange and miraculous it was that God could use technology, pain, and even algorithms to reach a heart that was breaking. But that was the thing about divine timing. It never made sense until you looked back and realized it was perfect all along. One Sunday evening, after recording a new message, she closed her camera and sat quietly. A soft wind brushed through her open window, carrying with it the distant chime of church bells. In her heart, she felt a whisper, gentle, familiar, unmistakably divine. "Well done, my child. You listened when I spoke. Now others can hear through you." Tears filled her eyes again, but this time, they were tears of gratitude. She pressed her hands together and whispered, "Thank you for finding me when I was lost. Thank you for letting me be part of your voice." From that night on, Sarah's message became simple but powerful. At the end of every video, she spoke the same words that had once saved her. "Greater than, if you're hearing this, it's not by accident. God knows where you are, what you've been through, and what you need. You were meant to hear this, because heaven knows your name." And somewhere, across 1,000 different screens, hearts would stir, just as hers once did. People in pain, people in doubt, people on the edge of giving up would pause, listen, and realize, they were never forgotten. Because God still speaks. Because every message that finds you at the right moment is heaven moving quietly, powerfully, lovingly in your direction. And Sarah, she no longer lived in the silence she once feared. Her days were filled with light, laughter, and a peace that came from knowing her pain had become a bridge between God and those still waiting for their own message. For she had learned the truth that changed everything. When God says, "You were meant to hear this," it's not just a phrase. It's a reminder that heaven is always speaking, and that even the smallest whisper can change a life forever.